Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of How to Maintain Happiness Throughout Your Life. Today, I'm going to talk about the third chapter, or the third habit, rather, it's not the third chapter, of Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is habit 3, titled Putting First Things First. So I will go and I will start the slide presentation. Bear with me a second. Here we go. Okay, so I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I will reiterate it. The book is broken down into categories. Habits 1 through 3 are what he calls the personal victories. Habits 4 through 4, 5, 6, that's a mistake on the slide. 4 through 6 are public victories. Habit 7 falls into its own category, and when we get to that, I will discuss what that is. So when we talk about habits 1 through 3, these are more your personal management, how you manage yourself. Habits 4 through 6 are how you interact with other people. And he intentionally put the personal management before how you interact with the other people, because you need to work on your personal management before you start working on your interactions with others. So he did a sort of general statement as to how he would describe habits 1, 2, and 3. So habit 1, if you remember, is be proactive or be responsible, basically expanding your ability and the control that you have over creating your own destiny. Habit 2, if you remember, is begin with the end in mind. Start off with a conception of what you want to achieve and create a very clear mental picture and ask yourself, does the end result align with my personal mission statement? And habit 3 is about prioritization and how you go from having a conceptualization of something you want to achieve to actually making that a reality. So then he starts off this chapter with a couple of questions, and I have atomic habits in parentheses here because it does sort of refer back to atomic habits, which is what I did on a previous presentation. So this revolves around what are our habits that affect our personal life and our professional life. So what is the one thing we can do on a regular basis that would have a dramatic impact on our personal life and our professional life? So we sort of want to balance our personal and professional life. So he talks about research on people who are successful and the qualities that make people successful. So one of the things that he does mention, among other things, is successful people will work on things that most people don't want to do. Why do they do this? Because they usually have a strong vision and a very clear vision of what the end goal will be, and they're willing to go through the distasteful things that they need to go through in order to achieve that end goal. And I would like to add to this thing is that whatever job you do, or what a lot of people consider as dream jobs, often there's elements within those jobs, in any job that you do, that most people don't like to do in that profession. So, so these are all things that we have to do. We have no choice, but we got to get through it. And then he talks about the evolution of time management. So in the early days, what he calls the first generation, we generated notes and checklists. And as we completed a task, we checked it off and said, okay, that task is done. Then let's move on to the next task. Then the second generation came into these calendars or these books that you can open up, and they organize your week or your months or your day. And then I'm dating myself, but PDAs, if you don't know the acronym, stands for Personal Digital Assistant. Back in the day, before cell phones, you used to be able to buy an electronic device that was like one of these calendars, and you would put your appointments in, and um, and that would help you organize your day, week, or month. And then the third generation talked about prioritizing those tasks, and he tacks on according to your values of the personal mission statement. And then the fourth generation, it doesn't really specify, or I did make a note as to when that sort of came about, revolves around organizing ourselves for self management. And then he also emphasizes that we want to make our primary consideration and around our relationships, and our secondary consideration around our tasks. Don't become a workaholic, and don't become so productive that you're just lonely, and your only relationships are the people you work with. Expand your social network and focus more on your relationships than you do on the tasks that you have to complete. Then he talks about this time management matrix. So I'm going to sort of start at quadrant one, and then go counterclockwise to land on quadrant two. So I put these things, or he put these things here. So on the left-hand side, you divide your tasks in between those tasks that are important and those tasks that are not important, or maybe tasks that have high impact and tasks that have low impact. And then in the upper section, you have tasks that are urgent. They need to be done right away. And then tasks that are not urgent, you can put them off for another day. So we start off with quadrant one. These are the basically when we're spending our time putting out fires. These are the crises, pressing problems, or the deadlines that we have to meet. These are tasks we can't ignore. When a fire comes up that we need to put out, we need to focus on that until that fire is out. Then we have the next tasks, a set of tasks that are urgent, but they don't have a lot of impact. So these are interventions, reports that we need to send out, meetings that we need to attend, and phone calls. And you'll see in quadrant four, it also says phone calls, but these are the phone calls where we're exchanging very important or urgent, he says, urgent information, my mistake, information that we need to exchange urgently. Quadrant four, he talks about busy work. These are the not urgent, not important. I would categorize these are the pleasure activities, recreational activities, leisure time, and then some phone calls. So some phone calls we have focus more around relationship building. And then we have tasks that fall into the important category, but they're not urgent. These are preventative things. So maybe designing processes so that we don't have to deal so much with quadrant one activities. Again, this goes into relationship building, planning out what we need to do, and some, I don't want to say recreation, he does put that in there, but I would say self-development would fall into this, even though it's not listed here. So then he does a brief description, and again, we do the same thing, quadrant 1, 3, and 4, landing at 2. So quadrant 1, as I mentioned, it's management by crisis. We don't want to stay stuck in quadrant 1, as we would all, I'm sure all of us would agree, that a manager who spends most of their time putting out fires is a very poor manager. They don't spend any time on preventative maintenance, I guess. Quadrant 3 activities, Uh, I guess those are the urgent but not important. But the importance thing I would say is depending on your perception. So we may get requests that to another person may seem important, but are really not that important to us, but they're urgent. So we might need to spend some time, but we have to be careful that quadrant 3 activities don't suck up our time. Quadrant 4 are time wasters, although I would argue they shouldn't be ignored. We need to spend some time on self-care. And again, nothing wrong with spending a day of binge watching a Netflix show if that's what you need, but don't live there. Um, if you need downtime, definitely take a day. And then quadrant 2, he describes as this is the heart of effective personal management. We want to move as many of our tasks into quadrant 2 as possible. And again, as I alluded to, we go back to that sort of working on our processes so that we're not spending time or we're staving off or avoiding the quadrant 1 emergencies that we need to deal with rather. And then, as I mentioned here, you can't say no to the quadrant 1 activities. Remember, they're the important and urgent tasks you need to take care of. These are the sorts of things where you need to drop what you're doing and focus on that task until whatever fire you're dealing with is put out. So, really, all we can do is say no to quadrant 3 and 4 activities. And then he encourages us not to be apologetic about saying no. Just kindly say, I can't accommodate your request. And leave it at that. Be firm. Be kind to the person who's asking, but just don't apologize. Just say sorry. Or again, maybe because I'm Canadian, I can't help but saying sorry, but I'm unable to accommodate your request. I think would be the best way to talk about it. Now, in reading this chapter, I also did get the sense that he was fairly rigid about your time management, and I would argue that you can only be so rigid. Life never ever goes according to plan, and you need to pretty much almost every day, if not at least weekly, reprioritize your things, move tasks off to a later date, and just sort of go with the flow to a certain extent as life unfolds. And then he talks about what can stop us from putting activities into quadrant 2. The first thing is we're unsure about how to prioritize our tasks. So I would argue, I don't think he says this, but I would argue if you do, go back into habits 1 and 2 and focus on your mission statement. And then you can ask yourself, does this task I need to carry out align with my mission statement, my personal mission statement, and my professional mission statement, as you remember, other mission statement, family mission statement, and so on. Then the second point is maybe you just have a problem with organizing yourself. You know what you need to do, it's all prioritized, but you're just not very efficient in how you're executing those tasks. And maybe in that case, you just need to work a little bit on making sure you have a good workflow, good process in place so that you can be efficient. Then the third point is just simple lack of discipline. You're getting distracted. You're focusing on things that don't really matter at the end of the day, and you're really not fulfilling the tasks that are important to you. And then as you evaluate tasks you want to put into quadrant 2, these are the criteria the task should align with. So, is it coherent? Does it align with your personal mission statement and the vision that you have for your life? And remember, begin with the end in mind, rather. Um, think about, well, what sort of person do I want to be? What do I want people to say about me? What legacy do I want my life to be? And then there's balance. So don't sacrifice your health. Don't become a workaholic. Don't sacrifice your personal relationships for your productivity. Always make time for your relationship. Then focus. He talks about, and we'll get to that a little later in the slides here, but he found that the ideal time horizon was a weekly basis. Organize your time each week. And focus, well, actually, I would argue that the people and focus go hand in hand, and the balance. Focus your life around your relationships and the people that you need to interact with rather than your tasks. Again, don't become a workaholic. And going back to the PDAs, the portable digital assistant, I almost forgot what it is. The good thing about that was you could carry that around with you. I think people from an older generation, even to this day, probably like a Warren Buffett, carries around a book that has a schedule in it. And I would say on this note, I did read somewhere that people who are very productive don't work on checklists. They work on scheduling time to carry out a task. They think time first, task second. And then he talks about the framework for quadrant 2 activities. So again, this is more like a process to how you choose what activity to put into quadrant 2. So first, think about the role. Is this something that I need to do for my role as a spouse, for my role as a boss, for my role as an employee, as a community member, so on and so forth? And then choose your goals. So remember, we're thinking about 1 week time horizon. So within that week and within considering that role that you play, pick 1 or 2 goals that you want to achieve in the next 7 days. Then open up your time management tool and sit down and schedule when it is that you're actually going to do that. And then keep it flexible. Again, as your day unfolds, certainly as your week unfolds, things won't go according to plan, and adjust your schedule accordingly. And as we move from first, second, and third generation into the final fourth generation, we're going to find that our tasks have these advantages. First, our tasks are based on our principles, our personal mission statement. Getting back to that question, who do we want to be? What do we want people to say about us? What do we want our life to mean as we go through our life? And then our tasks are conscience directed. They're ethical and they're moral, and they're guided by our conscience. And those tasks align with our personal mission statement. And because we're thinking about our different roles that we play in life, those tasks are balanced. Again, we're not becoming a workaholic. We're focusing on our relationships with our family and friends and our and other things, and our work colleagues. And then by Stephen Covey found that a week schedule is the ideal time horizon. So it helps keep us focused on it. And then one of the things he talks about, especially if you are a boss, that you may have to delegate tasks to other people. But we may even do it. We do that even. We may ask a family friend for whatever reason to do something, or uh, or our spouse. So he talks about good delegation and bad delegation. So the bad delegation is what he calls the gopher delegation. Go do this and let me know when it's done. The better way to delegate is what he calls the stewardship delegation. So sit down with a person, discuss with them the result that you want to achieve, and then give them the freedom on how to carry out that task. And then he goes through the process for how we should delegate tasks to another person. So again, sit down, come to an agreement on what the end result should look like, and honor that feedback that the person may give you, because you may find that they give you a perspective that you didn't previously think of. So solicit their feedback on what they think. Then set very general guidelines. And if you have experience with the task, share your knowledge. Don't let them walk into a brick wall that you saw coming. Share your knowledge. Allow others to learn from your mistakes. And when I say very general guidelines, I mean, think of obvious things like don't behave unethically or immorally. But you could narrow it a little bit and say, okay, well, for whatever reason, maybe company policy prohibits you from doing the task in such a manner. So make sure that they're very aware of policy. But beyond that, really allow that person to choose how they should execute that task. Next thing, whether you're doing it as a boss or you're asking a friend or a family member, provide the resources. Could be financial, but not necessarily. Could be some people that you provide to help them out, or could be some technical expertise that someone you know can provide. An example might be building a website and you know someone who's a programmer. Say, reach out to this person, they'll help you build that website. Or somebody who's a mechanical engineer, they'll help you out. Then come to an agreement on what success looks like when that task is completed, and come down with the criteria. These 4 points, if they're met, then we know that task was successful. And just in case that person, hopefully they don't, but if they slack off or they don't really decide not to care about what the criteria is, then you can establish, okay, what happens when the criteria is not met? And then he talks about getting back to this weekly schedule. So what he does, or did, I mean, he's no longer with us, but he sat down each Sunday for 30 minutes and he planned out the week coming. So this is the ideal time horizon to work on. So I will end the slide there. So we'll hide it. So there we go. So that is basically the habit 3, putting first things first. So hopefully I can get to the rest of the habits. I seem to be getting more time now. But thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, please hit the like button. That lets other people know that you enjoyed this. And hit the subscribe if you're liking the content that I'm putting out there. The subscribe button will let you know when I release a new video. And especially because at this point in my life, I can't be consistent. So it'd be a good idea if you let YouTube let you know. Okay, thanks for listening and have a great day.